Members, we have already got a quorum. I declare the meeting to order. This is a special meeting on measures for enhancing marine safety and the safety of passenger carrying vessels. And today we are very pleased to have many deputations and the administration team with us. Today's meeting is to enable the panel to listen to views from the deputations on measures for enhancing marine safety and the safety of passenger carrying vessels. The Secretariat has already distributed the deputations' written submissions before the meeting to members. I'd like to take the opportunity to remind the deputations that your remarks and your written submissions will not be protected by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. I would also like to remind you that when you use the speakers and also the earpiece, channel 0 is the floor, 1 is Cantonese, and 2 is English. So you may switch to the channel that you desire, and we have arranged for each deputation to have 3 minutes for your remarks. And I'll be calling upon you to speak in accordance with the seating plan. The first one is from Mr. Kwong, Mr. Kwong Koon-wan, Islands District Councillor. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to make 2 points here. First of all, is about the AIS, Automatic Identification System. I've been involved in the local vessel inspection advisory committee meeting. I've also met with the Marine Department, and the department has been emphasizing that with the installation of AIS, that would also help ensure marine safety, and where there are incidents, that would also facilitate the investigation undertaken by the department. But then, as I've said at the meetings, well, on this occasion, the Lemma incident is a very exceptional incident, and indeed, the investigation report has also singled out the factors involving the two captains, and therefore the investigation report is not comprehensive. In fact, on the 3rd of September, well, at a meeting held between the Director of Marine and also the sector, he said that when compared to other busy ports, Hong Kong is a relatively safe harbor. And for most of the regulated passenger carrying vessels, they've already been installed with VHF system and also radar system, and that would also facilitate and help or help ensure marine safety. In the past, for deckhands, they have not been given sufficient training, and if we were to install such a system, then that would only increase the burden on the part of the captain, and that would not help enhance the quality of marine safety. On the other hand, that could also become a risk factor. But then I would, of course, agree that the AIS would also help the Marine Department in undertaking monitoring, and where there are incidents, that would also facilitate investigation. And therefore, if the administration is of the view that the sector must install such AIS on board of the vessel, then I think the system must be for the purpose of monitoring and investigation. In other words, it's not there for helping the captain to do the navigation, and there should also be government subsidy for the installation. And also like to say that with regard to the securing of the seats, well, according to the code of practice issued by the administration for the sector, or for all passenger carrying vessels, there must be securely installed seats on board of the vessel. But then I've also shown these pictures to you. Well, for new ferry, well, for all the new vessels with such a seating, there are problems. There might be conflicts amongst passengers. There might even be fights or fightings amongst them. And according to some passengers, well, some female passengers might also be touched upon by other male passengers, and there might also be embarrassment between passengers seated very closely together. So I hope that you can pay attention to that. Thank you. Next, Mr. Arthur Boring. He's from the Hong Kong Shipowners Association. He's the Managing Director.
Chairman, I'll speak in English. I'm the Managing Director of the Hong Kong Shipowners Association, as you said. I'm also Chairman of the Maritime Services Training Board under the VTC, and I'm Chairman and spokesperson for the Maritime Employers Group in the International Labour Organization. So I have a great deal of experience in training and in seafarer welfare. I'm not sure that I fully understand the remarks about automatic identification systems because it's an automatic identification system. It's to identify the ships. It's to identify the ship that's broadcasting the signal. And the training required is training required to understand the system. It doesn't take you away from normal navigation of the ship. The association, and we have several local vessel operators as members, generally supports the proposals on the table, but we do recognize the additional costs to operators and the manning requirement. As chairman of the MSTB, I have set up a local vessel working group to look at training and certification for local vessel seafarers. I'm told now that the manpower survey on local vessel seafarers has been completed. I think Captain Lee here from the Seamen's Union might be able to tell us more about that. We have a shortage of local seafarers, and the additional equipment requirements, training requirements, will result in an increased shortage of local seafarers. So we need to recognize the issue of the cost of installation of the equipment, the cost of training, the shortage of seafarers, and make due allowance for that in any development of legislation that we go towards. The Marine Department recruitment is mentioned within the papers. You might know that our association has been involved for the last 10, 12 years in the recruitment of Hong Kong youngsters to be cadets on ocean-going ships. They're now coming up to Class 1 ocean-going and becoming the right level to be employed by the Marine Department as surveyors. So we have taken steps. It takes a long time to train the youngsters to get to the grade that we need for the Marine Department and the Pilot Association, but I think now we are starting to see fruit being born in the training of the cadets that we've done. Finally, Mr. Chairman, there are comparisons in the various briefing papers between Hong Kong and other ports. I think we need to realize that Hong Kong has its own place. It's a very different port to Singapore, for example, the nature of the traffic, the nature of the boats and ships. And any regulations that are designed must be for Hong Kong. They must be specific for Hong Kong and not seek to replicate anything that is elsewhere, to learn from best practice and to come up with something that's better, that's on display elsewhere in the world. Thank you, Chairman.
Next is Mr. Paul.
He's the Chief Executive Officer from Designing Hong Kong.
Chairman, we shouldn't blame the Marine Department. We should make sure that the Marine Department gets more resources. The Marine Department has been starved of resources for many years. And starved of resources, and I'll show you a big example. This is the north shore, this is the north end of the Yamate Typhoon Shelter. The ship survey area is right here. Next to a park, you can't get a car there. The cars are parked illegally in the roundabout here. And this space of land that was available has now been turned into a park instead of giving that to the Marine Department so that the boats can properly be surveyed and cars can be parked here and people have access to it. This is just one example of a failure to provide good facilities to the Marine Department. They've been starved of resources. The second point I'd like to make is that this paper doesn't deal with it, but it should deal with the fact that the Marine Department should have an expanded mandate. It should be the voice of the marine industry, not just looking after the safety of vessels and marine traffic. It should be broadly look at promoting the marine industry in society. And I can give you an example. It is only because of the efforts of a small group of people that we are going to retain shipyards in Up Lake Chau, Up Praya Road. They were going to disappear. It was 3-4 people that protested that stopped the disappearing of these shipyards that are necessary to keep vessels safe. It wasn't the Marine Department, it wasn't government. It was some people in the public. They would have disappeared and we would have been without space for our shipyards. It's because of that lack of a voice for the marine industry that these things tend to happen in Hong Kong. The third thing, these days the majority of the vessels and boats and crafts that be used in Hong Kong are for pleasure, recreation, tourism. It's the absolute greater majority. The boats are no longer the boats that be used for commercial purposes, but commercial purposes only for tourism, but not anymore for working purposes. These things don't have any space anywhere. If we want to have people that can work in the marine industry, people got to learn about the water. We've got to give people a chance to be on the water. A surfboard doesn't fit in an elevator, it doesn't fit in the MTR, and it doesn't fit in a minibus. This is how boats are kept in Hong Kong. These are the fishing boats. These are the recreational fishing boats in Hong Kong. This is what we do to the people of Hong Kong. We don't give them the space to moor their boats. This is how people have to get onto the land. Wooden ladders. Look at this. Jingyi Pier. The only way to get onto the land is using a wooden ladder. This is how we treat people that want to be on boats. The Marine Department has to stand up and fight for the industry, has to fight for people that want to be on the water. If people can be on the water, people can learn about the water, and they can be recruited to work in the Marine Department and the commercial industry. Thank you, Chairman.
Next, Captain Yu Chi Ming, Merchant Navy Officers Guild, Hong Kong. Mr. Yu. Thank you, Chairman. Because of the shortage of time, I'll just be highlighting a few points. With regard to the ship collision incident resulting in the tragedy, I hope that we can rebuild the safety culture, so that with the safety culture in place, we will have to start with proper marine training. In Hong Kong, we basically do not have that, and all of us in the trade have to be do self-learning.
Even for ocean liners, our standard is just that people have a high diploma. We cannot compare with other countries. They use people who have university graduation status. And then I'd like to talk about fatigue. All accidents point to fatigue. The same can be said to a large extent about this incident. Next, the background light. Yes, there is always background light along the way. And also about the fairway, especially the North Green Island Fairway and Southern Fairway coming from Macau Ferry Pier to Green Island, that fairway should be widened. According to the annex of the Marine Department paper on page 5, the number of vessels has increased by 5-fold. In other words, in our fairways, the traffic density has increased. The only solution is to expand or widen the fairways so that traffic density can be reduced. I'd also like to mention, according to the Marine Department radar plotting map and also the incident investigation report, well, I think there is some difference between the two. According to Captain Pryke, his view is that 4 minutes before the accident, the two vessels should have seen each other. But if you look at the Marine Department's plotting record, at 20:35 in that evening, the other vessel was picked up by the radar. So Lama 4 was only picked up by the radar at that hour. Thank you, Captain Yu. Next, Mr. Albert Lo Wing-shun, Vice Chairman of the Hong Kong Institute of Marine Technology.
And we are our expertise able and variable to assist the improvement of vessels safety and also activity in Hong Kong water. And we have submitted our paper, and I'm not going to go through all the paper and just give you a salient point of our suggestion and also our view. First, on the improvement measurement to be implemented in first phase, we think the eyesight has to be every 2 years at least, because the 5 years too long. And on the master list, that should make it compulsory. And also we suggest abandoned ship drill should be carried out periodically. On the watertight door, we think the watertight must be closed all the time with the alarm fitted. On the shortage seamen, and this issue should be seriously addressed and look for a solution. We leave to the Marine Department and the industry to sort out the solution. On the medium and long-term measure, and our view is on subdivision rule, this should be reviewed professionally by the professional body. And whether we go for 2 compartment fitting or one compartment, that should be seriously reviewed. On the AIS and the VHF radio, we do not think that would help the avoid accident directly, but it help the traffic control and also the port accident investigation. They are costly and also expensive to enforce the implementation. On the incentive scheme, should be made to encourage trainings of the crew and seamen. I think presently at Hong Kong is not enough training facility and also the assisting the seamen working in Hong Kong. The rest period that should be applied to crew as well. On the item on the independent audit review and benchmark survey, we have several views on here. First, the present speed limit should be reviewed, particularly after dark and a certain weather condition. And also, there is a lot of discussion on authorized surveyor and who have no involvement in the ferry in the Landmark 4 disaster. And quality management system should be reviewed for surveyor, inspector, and officer, particularly on the work and the inter-process communication. That's something to do with the surveyor itself. I think nothing to do with the AS. And on the Marine Department resource, I think with this the new improved measure and rule compliance, we have some doubt on the resource availability. So I think something had to be improved the resource within the Marine Department. On the safety regulation, it must be enforced without excuse on the cost, and public should be educated, and the safety must come with the high cost which they have to accept. Thank you very much, Chairman.
跟住係請黃福根先。
Next, Mr. Wong Fuk-kan, Islands District Councillor. Thank you, Chairman. Since the Lama incident, the department proposed a lot of safety measures in order to improve ferry operation. This will include kaitos for residents, and as a result, some kaitos have ceased operation, and it has affected us living in the Islands District. I hope the Marine Department can somehow adjust its improvement measures. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chen Chi-ming, Deputy Shipyard Manager of the Hong Kong Shipyard Limited. Thank you, Chairman. I am a member of the shipbuilding and ship repair industry. With regard to the improvement measures, I can support them. I can support the measures also to improve safety for passenger carrying vessels. Actually, starting from last year, we have had many meetings already together with the government and people in the industry. We have discussed how we can adjust and revise the safety criteria with regard to launches, ferries, and kaitos. How can we make communication safe for these vessels? And as for more urgent matters, we have these proposals, for example, life-saving appliances, contingency measures, the watertight door arrangement and also rest hours for seamen, etc. At the beginning, the industry was worried that it could not comply with the new criteria. However, and they also said that pressure would be brought upon them in terms of cost and the addition of equipment and facilities and also training of seamen. But then, all in all, if we can be proactive to aim at enhancing safety, I'm sure we can really reduce the number of accidents. But of course, at the same time, we should not be blinded to the needs of the trade. We would be very happy to continue to work with the government and the industry in order to enhance marine safety. Last but not least, in order to tackle the pressure that would be brought upon the trade, I believe the government should put aside more resources to help the trade. Next, Mr. Yang Pui-kang, Manager of the Maritime Services Training Institute. Very often, we hear people say that the examinations conducted by the Marine Department are problematic. But to me, however you conduct the examinations, it's all right. Even if you have long questions or short questions or even an oral exam, the important thing is how students prepare for the examination and what their attitude is, and also how the training institutes can prepare students. I have heard people say that we should have simulators in examinations. From what I remember, many years ago, the Marine Department also used simulators to conduct examinations. But in the end, people had to spend a lot of time in order to familiarize with the configuration of the simulator. And I believe, therefore, the simulator may not be the final solution. However, simulators are great for training. As for the AIS, I always think that it is good in helping us differentiate between vessels when there is a storm, when there is a fog, when there are many vessels appearing together. Then the AIS can help us differentiate vessel from vessel. But this is not very useful in avoiding collision. And if you fit too many things onto a vessel, there could be too much information fed to the captain. Thank you. Next, Mr. Koon-wan, Chairman of the Board of Management of the Hong Kong Sea School. Chairman, members of the trade, I'm the Chairman of the Board of the Hong Kong Sea School. We are one of the training institutes with the longest history in Hong Kong. We'd like to make 2 points on the subject. First of all, to develop a training program, and secondly, to enhance the remuneration for seamen. In Hong Kong, throughout these years, we have had only 1 or 2 serious marine accidents. So the Hong Kong port should be regarded as a safe port. But of course, we have had the Lamma 4 tragedy, and it has shown us that we do not have enough seamen in Hong Kong. First of all, training. All along, we do not have enough channels to provide training. And also, we do not have a protocol to dictate who can be a seaman. In the past, they have started as apprentices. In other words, there is no regular training program, and there is no systematic training, and there is no promotional ladder. Therefore, few people joined the trade, and manpower is lacking, and therefore the quality of service has suffered. Right now, we depend on the VTC to provide a 2-year high-dip course in marine engineering. Now, Mr. Young, the manager, if I'm wrong, please correct me. And also, we have the in-service seaman certification courses, etc. But these all point to seaman training for ocean liners. As for local vessels, the government has not injected any resources. And there is no training in theory or in practice. Also, the entry pay is on the low side. That is why young people are not attracted. Just look at my students. We provide training, and we are very proactive in doing that. We hope that our students will really become seamen. However, because of the low entry pay, our trained graduates actually have gone into other trades and they are not putting into practice what they have learned professionally. Our proposal is that apart from working together with the VTC, the government should also cooperate with other people in the trade and the non-profit making sector to set up a local seaman training institute so that our local seamen are properly trained. And the government should also review the salary structure, promotional ladder, prospects and salary, and also working hours for local seamen to make the job more attractive. According to statistics, in the next few years, many Hong Kong seamen will retire. I think this is time for the government to make a policy change. Lastly, to ensure marine safety, we, of course, know that this is supported by all stakeholders. I hope there could be regular meetings to allow the trade to speak up and give their views. Thank you. Next, Mr. Jackie Chung Yet Leung, Chairman of the Sai Kung Yacht Association. Chairman, members, good afternoon. We are all concerned about marine safety. Our association has been formed by fishermen, and also we hire out yachts. The Lama incident can be traced to the skills of two persons instead of involving many people. I would say that before 2007, there were over 10 types of vessels in Hong Kong, but now we only have 4. We don't only have one passenger carrying vessel type and ocean liners, but we have different types. We have engineering vessels, fishermen, boats, etc. From the perspective of marine safety, we think we need to strike a balance. Before any new measure is rolled out, I hope the Marine Department can communicate more with the industry. Recently, that has been done in a very proactive manner, but then you don't have any particular topic to consult the trade. The trade was allowed to speak freely in a meeting, and sometimes they have digressed. And also, if there is no consensus reached in a meeting, how can we strike a balance?
And then for pleasure boats, well, all along, we have got written tests and also oral tests, but then there is no practical test for the licensing of such boats. And then in Sai Kung, we have a growing number of vessels, and also there are also many people using speedboats in the area, but then there is no regulation whatsoever. And if that is the case, then the incident rate would definitely go up. And also, as a few speakers have said, many people are concerned about marine safety and also seafarers, but then there are also many seamen who have difficulty finding jobs. So how are we going to ensure that for captains, seamen, they can continue to engage in training? Because with the advancement in technology, are they able to use such equipment? Next, Ms. Cheng On Lai, Chairman of the Small Craft Workers Union. Good afternoon, Chairman. As a workers' union for seamen, I'd like to express the following concerns. In the wake of the Lama incident, we'd like to express the following views. Number one, we agree that for the captains and also seamen, there should be regulation of their working hours, because captains have to have enough rest before they can navigate the vessels properly, and only then will we be able to ensure the safety of the passengers. This is a responsible act, and therefore as a trade union, we are in favor of that. Second, we support that during night time there should also be a lookout. But then we are concerned that for the seaman doing the job of a lookout, if there is any accident, would he be held responsible? Because well, he's only a qualified seaman, but then if he has to take up responsibility, then we will have to delineate that very clearly. And also, thirdly, well, for seamen's examination, the hours of navigation will have to there would also be an exam, and they will have to pay for such tests, but then they will have to pay for it themselves out of their own pocket, and the administration has no subsidy whatsoever. And if the administration does not offer any assistance to them, then there might be difficulties. And also, other than enhancing the safety awareness of the captains and the seamen, we also have to ensure that the community at large would also have enhanced awareness on safety. With improvement of such facilities, we also need to have additional manpower. We have also talked to the trade association as well as the administration. We all agree that in terms of our manpower, we do have a shortage. For example, recently the BTC issued a local survey on seafarers or seamen. We can see that we do have an acute shortage, and there is also a wave of retirement, and we have to have the administration being involved in this. That's why, with regard to the training of local seamen, we have the following suggestions. Number one, we have to provide more training so that we can have an evening course, and there should be more locations for such training, because at present they can only go to Tai Lam Chong, and it's very costly, and it's also very inconvenient, and therefore we should offer more courses by other institutions, and the administration should also offer tuition fee subsidy. For example, in the construction sector, they also offer similar financial assistance. And also, we should also make reference to the construction sector's training program. Employers should also be offered incentive payment, and that would also increase the attractiveness. And also, employers can also recruit graduates from the Marine Services Training Institute. That would also increase the number of people joining the trade. Next, Mr. Lee Chi-wai, Hong Kong Seamen's Union. Thank you, Chairman. The Lamma ship incident is very unfortunate, and as Ms. Lee has just said, we have to enhance the safety awareness, whether it's the captain, the seaman, and also the passengers. We have to step up education. And I think the Marine Department needs to clarify this. We agree that during night time, and also where the visibility is low or poor, we have to have an additional lookout on board of the vessel. But then for the qualification of the lookout, I hope that there can be very clear definition, because for this lookout, well, he will only be required to undergo an eye test once every 5 years, but then with good eyesight, it doesn't mean that he'll be able to do a good job as a lookout. Well, if somebody has a good eyesight, and then he is automatically assumed to be a competent lookout, I don't think that's the case. And also, with regard to the master list, where it should be put up, and also how it should be notified, well, I hope that the Marine Department can make it clearer. With regard to the equipment to be installed on board of the vessel, I personally think that the AIS will not be able to do much, even if it's installed, because if the monitor is so small, what it displays, if you are not able to read the characters very clearly, then what's the point of having it in the first place? And I hope that the Marine Department can make it clear. We are talking about a radar, not a collision avoidance radar, because that one would be very large, and I don't think that's we can install it in the wheelhouse. And also for the equipment to be used on board of the vessel, you can take a look at that. Well, the captain will have to navigate, while he will have to monitor the ship front, and also he will have to keep an eye on the radar. And if he has to talk on the radio, then he has to be a superman if he has to assume or take up so many tasks. So we will have to do more in terms of training and also the examination system. Please do not implement that so hastily, because what is in place now has been working well for years. Yes, there might have been this incident, but then if you just bulldoze this through very hastily, then you are going to affect many people's livelihood. Next, Captain Chow Yet Meng. He's the program leader, Higher Diploma in Maritime Studies from the Hong Kong Institute of Vocational Education. Yes, Chairman, good afternoon. I have several points to make. First, I hope that the administration will put in additional resources on marine traffic monitoring and also training for those in the sector. I think we can make reference to the IMO, the International Maritime Organization's Manila revised package, because over 100 countries in the world have already signed that document, and Hong Kong as an observer, but then our sovereign state has already acceded to that, and therefore we should make reference to that revised agreement so that we can come up with standards that are suitable for Hong Kong. In the past, I used to work on speed boats, and in Hong Kong, the monitoring system has to be enhanced, because in Hong Kong waters, in particular within the Victoria Harbour, marine traffic is very busy, and that has to do with the number of vessels and also their speed. Apart from that, the Marine Department's monitoring has been rather passive. I hope that it can be more proactive. In particular, where there are speeding, I hope that there can be more prosecution. And also, on working hours, as we know, well, working hours have a lot to do with fatigue. But then I think there is a dispute between the sector and the authorities as to what's the best. We don't want to continue with this one day work, one day rest, because that might cause unnecessary risks. Next, Mr. Louis Cito. He's the chairman of the Hong Kong Institution of Engineers, Marine and Naval Architects Discipline Advisory Panel. Mr. Cito. Thank you, Chairman. Many members and representatives have spoken. Well, me personally, and also from the Institution of Engineers, when we look at the Lama incident, we try to look at it for the purpose of ensuring safety. Well, since 2007 for Class 2 and Class 3 vessel, they have to be checked by authorized surveyor. But then for well, this has to do with AIS, because AIS is not qualified to survey these vessels. Originally, at the working group meeting, well, up until 2008, dangerous vessels and also passenger carrying vessels are not covered, because it's been said that for AS there is a shortage of manpower. That's why the requirement has been suspended, and they have not yet reviewed the situation. And then for authorized surveyor AS, in terms of their qualifications and requirements, we hope that the Marine Department will enforce it, because there might be AS who might not have been properly regulated, and in terms of their qualification, they are substandard. So at least you will have to make sure that for the new recruits by the Marine Department, they have to they have to have the same qualification as Marine Departments and inspectors and so on. We cannot say that because of a shortage of manpower, we can relax the requirement. And also in terms of the inspection of high-speed vessel, we hope that the Marine Department will pay more attention to that. In terms of watertight door, well, in your approval of plans, you will have to check more stringently to make sure that what is on the plan will be there on board of the vessel. And also, they will also have, they are trying to recruit more seamen and also operators of local vessels and coxswains and so on. Well, the administration will have to put in more resources to work in the seafarers training school and also the VTC. They should set up a dedicated team so that they can look at midstream operations and also in Hong Kong, how we can attract more young people to join the profession. On top of that, well, in terms of training for people working on ocean liners, well, I have 13 trainees who are raw university graduates. They are not from Ivy, and they've already got licenses for second engineers and also third engineers. I hope that the administration and the Marine Department can promote this further. Next, Mr. Chiang Kem Yi, Honorary Advisor to the Hong Kong Fishing Vessel Owners Association Limited. Thank you, Chairman. In the wake of the Lemma incident, according to my experience, I tried to find out the reasons for this. Well, that's because of the coxswains on board of the two vessels. They were negligent. They did not concentrate. So I think human factor was the main reason. And because of the high speed and in split seconds, we had the incident. For the other, they were just attributing factors or contributing factors. That's why we believe that for vessels traveling at a speed of higher than 10 knots, then we have to have an assistant coxswain who will be there to help out. Because in a split second, if you make a mistake, then you can have a very serious incident. It's not like driving a car. You will have to make sure that you can keep an eye on all fronts. Well, my experience in maneuvering a fishing vessel for the master, they will have to take a break once every 2 hours. But then very often for these people, they have to work 5 or 6 hours in a row. Well, without an incident, you might think that it's okay. Well, I think that they should not be required to work long hours because that would affect their concentration. Well, I've had several decades of experience of navigating fishing vessels, and therefore they will have to have proper rest breaks. Next, Mr. Roland Roger Eastham. He's the Marine Services Manager from the Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman. The Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club, like many boating clubs and marinas, is involved principally in the fostering and the development of safe recreational boating in Hong Kong. We do recognise the main thrust of this discussion focuses on the commercial sector, but also must note that safety afloat is relevant to all users in Hong Kong waters. We've read and by and large have to concur with the views expressed in the written submissions that have been sent to this panel already, and would like to add around 50% of all local vessels that are licensed in Hong Kong currently are Class 4 pleasure vessels. That sector is growing at around 6% per annum, which is significantly faster than other sectors of local vessels. So to accommodate this growth and to encourage and facilitate the development of safe recreational boating, we believe requires due consideration at policy and planning level within government. The pleasure boating sector in Hong Kong does contribute to Hong Kong's economy in terms of not only direct employment, but also in the associated support and service industries. As one small example, the Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club alone employs 250 people. We have some specific observations on the report so far, that we would fundamentally support education and training above all other measures to improve safety standards. One example may be, for example, the introduction or reintroduction of a publication called Safety Afloat, which was previously published through Government Information Services but has now been withdrawn. We hope that the local vessel Class 4 subcommittee can be more representative in the future and a more effective body as well, and would like to see some review of the Code of Practice included in their mandate in terms of reference. Specifically, we would like to see adoption of more appropriate standards for pleasure vessels, particularly, say, ISO standards for life jackets as opposed to the current requirement of SOLAS. We believe that the local masters and engineers curriculum and exam procedure is due for an overhaul that could hopefully include more practical training and evaluation. We would also, in agreement with Mr. Zimmerman, urge government to review as a matter of priority the provision of safe moorings, particularly the current policy that no private moorings may be laid in typhoon shelters. Provision of safe mooring, not just safe haven, needs to be included as an objective in government planning. Finally, for the Marine Department to deliver on improved levels of safety, tighter industry standards and enhanced levels of public education and awareness, they must be resourced and structured accordingly. The creation of a dedicated pleasure and recreational boating section within Marine Department could go some way towards delivering on these goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Donald Lee, the Honorary Secretary of Hong Kong Water Ski Association. Chairman and members, first of all, I'd like to thank the government and friends of the industry for all working together to enhance marine safety, but then there is always room for improvement. I would say that in the working group meeting at the Marine Department, we have already confirmed a lot of work that can be done, and now what leaves to be done is the actual implementation. We have confirmed the directions for improvement, but then do we have to go all the way with regard to some measures all at once? I think we can consider that instead of going the whole stretch at one go, maybe we can do it step by step so that there could be more time for the industry to get the funding necessary, and also so that we can review the last step when we take the next. Now, if there has to be any fine-tuning on the way, we'll still have the opportunity to do it. This is my view. Thank you. Next, Mr. Derek Hung, Kwai-chun District Councillor. Chairman, after the Lemma collision, the administration set up the investigation committee and also steering committee to come up with improvement measures. Members of the public expect that there would be actual improvements. I have experience working for 10 years on a merchant ocean liner, and I also hold relevant certificates for marine services. I can say, Chairman, that the Captain Chow Chi Wai, he was my classmate when I studied marine services, and I also supervised him when I worked in the merchant ocean liner. With regard to the fourth proposal in the report, it is said that if the vessel carries 100 passengers or more, there should be one lookout when there is a low visibility. But then it is very difficult to define low visibility. It can be from 0.5 knots to 3 knots. And also, if the vessel has already started its journey, it is not easy to find a lookout on board. And I think there should be the creation of the post of deputy captain. As for eye tests every 5 years, I believe we should act according to Cap 478, that there should be a physical test, including eye tests, every 2 years. Vessels which carry 100 passengers should have a muster list. I think there should also be drills so that seamen know actually what to do when there is an accident. And number 7, with regard to safe operation, I think there should be VHF installed for all vessels which carry 12 passengers. Now even Star Ferry doesn't have to be fitted with VHF. As for the AIS and also collision avoidance radar, I think you should take it up with the industry according to the actual circumstances. And then para 12, between 2007 to 2012, the rental rate of Class 4 vessels increased from 106 to 593. Now many yachts or pleasure vessels are being rented out. I think that the administration should talk to the trade to see whether the establishment of Class 4 vessels should be revised, because if there is an incident, I don't know whether the insurance cover would be sufficient. As for the quality of seamen, I think there is a shortage of manpower. The Maritime Services Training Institute has a big role to play. A lot of resources are put into the courses by the government every year. But then I believe some classes cannot be opened, and seamen have to go to Guangzhou to read the courses. I hope the administration will take an overhaul and to look at the effectiveness of the institute. Thank you. Next, Mr. Ringo Chow, Marine Manager of Hong Kong United Dockyards Limited. Thank you, Chairman. I agree that we should enhance marine safety, and in the report, it is said that there should be a muster list and other measures. But we have to consider how the industry can adapt to the changes. If the changes are brought about too quickly, there could be an impact on the trade. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you. Mr. Lee Kun-tai, Managing Director of Coral Sea Ferry Service Company Limited. Thank you, Chairman. I represent Coral Sea Ferry Service Company Limited. We provide ferry service between Sai-wan-ho and Sam-ka-chun, and also between Sai-wan-ho and Kwun-tong. After the October 1st accident, our company has exercised self-discipline and checked the life-saving appliances to make sure there is 100% coverage for adults and also 5% of the total capacity for children. And then the Marine Department again said that the life-saving appliances for children on board should tally with the number of children on board at the time. But this is so worrying to us because in every vessel we have different number of children. And how can I make sure that there would be enough children life-saving jackets for every sail? So how do you expect us to comply in actual circumstances? How many life-saving jackets should we put on board before we can comply with the Marine Department's requirement? After our lobbying, we hope the Marine Department can really find a solution soon. And also look for life-saving jackets that can fit both adults and children on our behalf. Actually, well before the accident, we have already put aside, or we have already ordered some life-saving jackets that can fit adults and children. But then after the accident, the Marine Department said that those life-saving jackets, the style of which is no longer appropriate. I hope the Marine Department will right the wrong and accept the type of life-saving jackets that we had been approved to obtain. In fact, this same style of life-saving jacket is great because it can be adjusted so that it can fit both adults and children. I would really ask the Marine Department to be practical in helping the industry solve our problems by considering our actual operational needs, and do not just bury mines in the ground and leave us to fend for ourselves. Thank you. Mr. Bondi Wen-si Kit, Chairman of the Passenger Vessels Joint Committee. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to talk about the measures to enhance marine safety and also the safety of passenger carrying vessels. Many meetings have been held between the Marine Department and the trade, and discussion has been conducted on short, medium and long-term measures. In general, the industry is agreeable to enhancing the safety of passenger carrying vessels and also marine safety. However, with regard to the half-baked measures, which may not be practicable, the trade is facing a lot of pressure and we are quite worried. There are measures that just cannot be implemented in the short term, and there are others which are not practicable. If the Marine Department would nonetheless push forward these measures, there will be a lot of disturbance caused to the industry, and what is more important is that these measures are not going to be effective in improving marine safety, so the public is not going to benefit. We must emphasize that the core issue is not, definitely not, that the industry is not mindful about public safety and so we object to the measures. The actual reality is that there is a shortage of manpower in the market. Without regular and professional training, this problem cannot be resolved in the short term. We have a gap in manpower training. We have a gap of in the succession plan in every company. It is not that if you give us money, we are going to be able to solve the problems. The major premise is there must be enough training provided, so we have successors, so to speak. And also, the existing generation of seamen will have the skills enhanced. There are 42 members in our Passenger Vessels Joint Committee, and we cover 90% of Hong Kong ferries, launches, kaitos, and also pleasure vessels and vessels for hire. We are all of the view that now the safety level in the Hong Kong port is satisfactory. It is very safe to ride on a vessel in Hong Kong. According to the Marine Department statistics, launches, ferries, and kaitos, if you look at their collision figures, between 2007 and 2010, there was just an average of under 10. But then 400,000 vessel trips have been plying in Hong Kong waters, so the accident rate is on the low side. Last year, we had the Lama collision accident. It is a very rare accident. If you negate well-established local vessel safety protocol just because of one accident, if you neglect the track record of safety, I think you have neglected the long-term efforts made by the industry all these years. I hope members and members of the public can look at the facts. Without the package of measures to help us, we will not be able to comply with these measures. Even if you do so, safety cannot be enhanced. You cannot make use of this excuse to try to push through measures that are not going to help us lower the accident rate and then drive people out of their jobs. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chan Kwok-wai, Operations Manager of New World First Ferry Services Limited. Thank you, Chairman. We provide local vessels. We are an operator, and also we are part of the trade. We definitely support and identify with the measures to enhance safety. In the past year, we have been taking part in the working group meeting of the Marine Department, and we have been looking into measures to enhance safety. But then in January, shortly after the hearing started, the Marine Department all of a sudden rushed into asking the industry to carry out measures without having regard to the local operating environment. And amongst these, you did not regard the operating environment, and even America and Europe allowed vessels to have seats that are not fixed to the floor. But then the Marine Department said that even in the luxury compartment, we have to fix all the seats to the floor, and also you shorten our license period. And also in terms of life-saving jackets, you have asked us to put in enough children life-saving jackets. But what is enough? We don't know.
And they have totally ignored the problem of the shortage of the lack of training for new recruits. And in terms of the shortening of the licensing period, well, as a result of that, many ferry operators have encountered difficulties, and that would also affect the deployment of vessels. Well, in the past, upon the expiry of our licenses with the inspection by the Marine Department, we can ask for an extension of the license by 3 months, and that's been an established practices. And in the past, there was never any incident resulting from the extension of such a short-term license. And also, in the past, when New World First Ferry applied for outlying islands operating license, we have always made use of the 3 month period, so that we'll be able to enhance the effective use of resources, so that we'll be able to maintain fare stability and also reduce the burden on the passengers. But then this year, the Marine Department notified us that the 3 month extension will be scrapped, and as a result, we have the utilization rate of the vessels will be reduced by 20%, and as a result, we will have to procure 3 more high-speed vessels, and also 12 vessels with a seating capacity of 1,200. We have applied for an exemption, and then we've managed to get a 2 month extension. But then, despite all that, in terms of our utilization rate, we have also seen a reduction by 7 or 8%, and also because of the maintenance cycle, which has been shortened. Then in terms of the manpower for maintenance, that would also drastically increase, and that would also add to the pressure that we face. Well, while we are trying to maintain fare stability, that would become a lot more difficult. And therefore, I like to stress that if the administration does not pay heed to the fundamental problems that we encounter, if they do not help us in resolving the manpower shortage problem, then I believe that in the not too distant future, we'll be encountering difficulties, and many operators would also have to suspend their operation. Next, Peng Chau Kaito Association, Mr. Ken Wong. Mr. Wong? I think the administration does not provide any support to ferries and launches. Well, for hybrid engines of vehicles, they got financial subsidy from the administration. But then, as far as we are concerned, we do not receive any subsidy at all. Well, on 6 routes, with the assistance of Miriam Lau in the past, we managed to get some assistance. But then we have stressed that within Peng Chau, we are the only mode of transport. But then the administration said that we are not a proper mode of transport. That's why we do not receive any assistance at all. And many operators have already given up on their license. For example, Hailing Chau Ferry, they have already given up. And by the 9th of November, I would also be giving up, because there is no prospect at all. Because the Marine Department's policies have been changing all the time. All right, they might say one day that life jackets are not up to standard. That's why we will have to procure them. And also for primary school students and so on. Well, in the past, I used to have only about a dozen or so such small children life jackets on board. And now I am required to have over 40. So what am I supposed to do? And also for Cheung Chau, well, you can see that for vessels that can carry 8 passengers, they can actually carry up to 40 passengers. But then there has been no prosecution at all. So that would also stifle the survival of proper ferry operators like us. And also on communication with the Marine Department, the reason why we have this meeting. Well, on the 27th of July, at a review meeting with the Marine Department, we said that with regard to the 5 short-term measures, we had some difficulties. But then the officer attending the meeting said that, all right, you might say what you want, but then we will be implementing it anyway. That's why we have to seek the help of members of this council. That's why we have this meeting, for us to voice our concerns. Next, Mr. Wong Yu Ken, chairman of the Hong Kong Cargo Vessel Traders Association Limited. Yes, thank you, Chairman. On behalf of our association, we are very concerned about marine safety measures and also their impact on the cargo vessel operators. We are Class 2 vessels, and therefore we have to be equipped with children life jacket. But then for Class 2 vessels, they are not really passenger carrying vessels. It's just for works and also loading and unloading of materials and so on. And basically all the deckhands of seamen on board of the vessel, they are already over 18 and they are already qualified. They have the certificates and so on. They are not really passengers, and therefore to require us to procure additional children life jacket is totally unnecessary and unwarranted. And also for high-risk vessels, they will have to be equipped with AIS. But then, as far as we are concerned, we are Class 2 vessels. We are not automatic vessels. We also carry and transport dangerous goods. But then we are non-automatic vessels. And for our barges, we are not just carrying one type of dangerous goods. We carry all sorts of goods. And also, for vessels carrying dangerous goods, the Marine Department does have its own regulations. We have to have this prior notification system. We will have to inform them well in advance as to where we are taking the goods from and where the destination is. And therefore, what's the point of having this additional AIS? It's not going to work. It's just that afterwards, if there is any incident, then that would also help them collect evidence. And also for cargo vessels, in terms of electricity and also electronic equipment, we don't have a lot of them, because basically we have mechanized cargo vessels. And also in terms of the operation of the vessels, we do not rely on navigational knowledge, because we are just carrying cargoes, and therefore the most important thing is you have to know how you can transport such goods. And therefore, to require us to install such electronic equipment on board of the vessel for us cargo vessels, that would only add to the burden of these vessels, and the pressure would also increase. Thank you. Next, Mr. Kwok Tek Kay. He's from the Hong Kong and Kowloon Motorboats and Tugboats Association. Thank you, Chairman. I'm representing the Hong Kong and Kowloon Motorboats and Tugboats Association Limited with regard to enhancing marine safety and also the safety of passenger carrying vessels. We support that. I have to stress that we do agree that passenger safety is of top priority and is incontrovertible. Well, our association is formed by local passenger carrying ferry operators and also licensed launchers and so on. And we provide services. We provide passenger services and also tugboat services and also transport of goods and so on. We understand that on the 1st of October we had the Lamma collision incident, resulting in many casualties. We agree that this is a rare accident resulting in many deaths. But then, the case is still being listed for hearing, and therefore it's premature for us to come to any conclusion as to what caused this. And after the incident, the administration appointed two maritime experts to conduct an investigation, and then on the 30th of April this year, a report was published and measures were recommended for the short, medium to long term, and some 73 recommendations were made in the report, and most of these measures would be difficult to implement in reality, and they would also cause a lot of nuisance to the sector. First, the Marine Department should play its role as a marine traffic monitor or super monitoring authority, and it should conduct appropriate assessment on the 73 recommendations to find out which would be suitable for Hong Kong waters. They should not just take on board all the recommendations, because most of these recommendations would only be suitable for international waters. And afterwards, they should also talk to the sector so that the sector will have enough time to implement them. And they should also confirm whether these measures are practicable and feasible. Out of the 73 recommendations, one is that we should have an additional lookout on board of the vessel to help the captain. Well, the administration is fully aware of the fact that lookout, how important a lookout is to his captain. Well, depending on the water conditions and also the weather. Well, we have been arranging for seamen to do the job of a lookout. I think this is the captain's responsibility. There is no need for us to legislate on this. In fact, we should not be interfering with the professional judgment of the captain. We should not just be regulating on the equipment on board of the vessel. For example, AIS, and also, it will not be very effective in avoiding collision. I think the most important thing is to step up training for seamen, and their safety awareness will also have to be enhanced. Only then will we be able to ensure that there will be a safety culture. Next, Marine Excursion Association Limited, Mr. Albert Cheung. Thank you, Chairman. We represent all the pleasure boats for hire. I've been in the trade for over 30 years, and all along it's been very safe, and those who are navigating the vessels are treating safety as their top priority, because the vessels are their own assets, and therefore they attach a lot of importance to safety. And every year we do organize Marine Safety Day with the Marine Department. The Lamma incident is an isolated incident. For many years, we've been working very hard. We've been exercising self-discipline, and many of these policies have dealt a severe blow to the trade. For example, when we organize major events, they said that there must be a passenger tally, and the passenger list will have to be given to the Marine Department in advance. In fact, this is not practicable. My suggestion is, on the day of the event, so long as we can have the passenger list on board of the vessel, that's okay, that's good enough. Next, well, at the time of major event, all the passengers on board will have to put on their life jacket. Well, that might not be practicable. All right, what if they are enjoying a buffet meal on board of the vessel? There needs to be more discussion and negotiation. What if the passengers refuse to put on their life jackets? Well, under the present law, it's the duty of the captain to ensure that they put on their life jackets. And if the duty of the captain is so onerous, who would be bothered to become captains? So it's like taxi drivers and minibuses. I think it's the passenger who would be held responsible. And you should be responsible for your own acts, and therefore if you do not put on your own life jackets, you should be held liable. Yes, I think there is room for improvement in terms of maritime safety, but then I hope that the Marine Department and the administration can talk to us first before implementing them, or else there would be a lose-lose-lose situation. Thank you. Next, Johnny Leung. He's from the Star Ferry Company Limited. He's the general manager. According to the LVAC's document dated May the 30th, with regard to the minimum number of passengers on board of the vessel, the Marine Department requires the trade data. If you have 26 vessels that are up to standard, then the level of seamen on board of the vessel will have to increase. In fact, we are talking about some 40 plus seamen that will have to be additionally recruited for that purpose. And as many representatives from the trade have said, well, in the maritime sector, well, we are already having a difficult time where we do not have enough new recruits, and therefore where there is a severe shortage of manpower. Even according to the VTC's latest local vessel survey, in fact, within the sector, we have got over 100 vacancies that have been left vacant for more than 6 months now. And if we were to rush through these measures, and if within a year we have to recruit 40 more seamen, in reality, in terms of training, there is inadequate training for seafarers and seamen. There is simply no chance that we'll be able to meet the requirement. And in practice, in training up a local coxswain with Class 1 coxswain license, that would take at least 5 years. Well, we can only train up a captain to navigate and to operate a local vessel in 5 years, and yet the Marine Department is now requiring us to recruit 40 plus seamen in order to meet the standards and fill the vacancies. Obviously, both the department and the Bureau have not faced up to this fundamental problem in the sector. That is, we have a shortage of manpower.
In the past, the Marine Department has already got a very well-established mechanism to look at the number of hands on board. Now, even if you are going to launch the new requirement, you should not totally negate the old mechanism. And since we are still operating according to the law, you should not just impose the new requirement on the existing fleet. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chen Kam Hong, Director of Fortune Ferry Company Limited. Good afternoon, Chairman. According to the existing survey and licensing system, vessels which have over 12 years are regarded as Class 1 and so are risky. Now, the survey cycle is well established, and we don't understand why after the Lama accident the Marine Department rushed into implementing a series of measures, including checking the watertight door integrity of all local vessels, and also checking all life-saving jackets for adults and children. It seems they are putting up a show for the Hong Kong public and to exhibit their commitment to enhance marine safety. And it is now saying that the equipment on board is insufficient. But to our company, we have always placed emphasis on passenger safety. And we would always be acceptable to any requirements that can enhance safety. With regard to a regular body check for captains, actually most ferry companies would subject captains to physical examination when they join the company, and also when captains apply and are licensed, they are subject to eye tests. And also, when a captain reaches the age of 65 and he seeks renewal of license, he also has to present his eye test result. I believe these measures are quite sufficient. After the Lama accident, the Marine Department started many one-day refreshment courses together with the Marine Service Training Institute to allow captains to revise the collision avoidance measures and also how to avoid head-on collision. It also uses simulated systems in order to avoid collision head-on and also other types of collision. I think these short-term courses are useful. I myself and my ferry seamen also took part in the Marine Safety Forum held in November last year. It was conducted by Mr. Young, the manager, and other senior lecturers at the Marine Services Training Institute. I believe it was very informative and it was very useful. I like just to say that it is very safe to ride on a vessel in Hong Kong. Thank you. Next, Mr. Yun from Discovery Bay Ferry Company. Thank you, Chairman. I represent the trade today.
In English. With regards to the Hong Kong Marine Department's proposal to revise the working hours guidelines for crew working on local passenger ferries, we are expressing our disappointment on this issue as the board did not fully understand the basis of how local ferries are operated and recommended the adoption of IMO regulated working hour guidelines used by Hong Kong, Macau fast ferries, as well as joint comparison to ferries being operated in Singapore and Australia. In Hong Kong, most of the local operators are running on a 24-hour shift rotation roster with at least 6 hours or more continuous rest time given. This is not considering other periods of rest like lunch and dinner breaks, time off between scheduled service and so on. This one day on and next day off rotation system was the working norm in this trade, and there was never any problem. With the adoption of the new guidelines, operators are now only allowed to roster maximum accumulated sailing duties of not more than 13 hours. When asked on numerous occasions to clarify this part, Marine Department has avoided answering this question on the basis of how 13 hours working limit came about. Following on this subject, we hope the Hong Kong government can take a holistic approach and consider the following issues before parachuting a new policy that can drastically affect the survivability of the local ferry industry. Okay, 1. To increase the supply and training of crew and seafarers for the local ferries. 2. Address the shortage of manpower in the market, and as the new working guidelines require more crew to operate the ferries across the industry. The gap between the fair prices of local Hong Kong ferries vessels or compared with Hong Kong, Macau, Singapore and Australian ferry operators. With rising operating costs, the sustainability of local ferry operators and affordability of the passengers to bear the increase in costs to maintain the level of service. And Marine Department to work closely with the Transport and Housing Bureau to support the local ferry industry with practical and useful guidelines in maintaining the high safety standard in Hong Kong. Since the very first working meeting, the local ferry industry has urged both Marine Department and Transport Bureau to address the industrial shortfall in crew, training of qualified operators, and the turnover of local seafarers due to retirement and outflow of talent to other sectors. Thank you.
跟住咧係請姜。
Next, Mr. Kwai-chun from Eastern Ferry Company Limited. Kaitos are a traditional industry, and in fact, our safety parameters have been extremely high. We have indeed had no accidents, I dare say. Well, but then even if you set the safety parameters high, you don't necessarily have good safety. Many friends of the industry have talked about life-saving jackets. After the accident, the Marine Department acted quickly, and just in a period of 3 months, the Marine Department came to check us twice. All the time we have put enough life jackets on board, but because of the coverage in the press, because of the views in the community, now I'd like to really ask whether the Marine Department has been rushing into carrying out extra measures. All the time we have said that there should be 5% of life jackets for children. Now you say enough, but who are children? They, according to the IMO guidelines, they should be at 1.5 meters or below in height and also not more than 41 kilograms in weight. And it seems we lack common sense. If you say there should be life jackets for children, and if children are from the age of 3 to 12, should we keep life jackets for different children because they can vary greatly in size? Now, should we just listen to the experts? What they say may not be tailored for Hong Kong. And have you looked into the actual operating difficulties? I believe our departments should be professional in judging what is practical in those reports. And also the public should understand that every place has its own special characteristics. We have got accumulated 170 years safe sailing experience and record. We have never had any big problems. Why is it that we are abandoning our wisdom and experience? And why have you not included any local experts in such an important report? I find that quite regrettable. Many of us are captains, but we are in fact captains of very small boats. Why do you ask us to abide by such stringent guidelines? In fact, in Hong Kong, we have so many different types of vessels plying in the waters, and this is rarely seen in the world. Just look at the Chang Chau ferry route. It is difficult for them to comply as well. So let us be scared by just one accident. Let us be practical and take a review locally how we can help society and passengers. Thank you, Mr. Cheng Tai Ki, Director of Key Marine Service and Consultant Limited. Thank you. I am an authorized surveyor of the Marine Department. I am also a working representative of the industry in another committee. Today we are responding to the measures proposed by the Lamma Island Accident Investigation Report and also the Marine Department's requirements, especially the AIS and collision avoidance radar. I'd like to talk about the technology involved and the difficulties. These two installations are only required for ocean-going vessels in the IMO. With regard to local, ferries, unless you are dictated by your license, you don't need to install such facilities. These two types of equipment require the support of different electronic equipment on board before they can be effective. Local vessels just do not have such supplementary electronic facility on board. So even if we have them installed, they would just lie idle. And also, you need professional training before you know how to operate these installations. And yet the administration has not put in money to conduct training. Like the Marine Services Training Institute, they can only provide basic radar operating training once every 2 to 3 years because of a lack of resources. And all these years, they have only been able to turn out 8 to 10 such people. And of course, if you have had training in operating a radar, you would be able to read the radar charts so as to avoid collision. So you actually don't need the collision avoidance radar as long as you have the radar. And even if you have the collision avoidance radar, it doesn't mean that you will not meet up with a collision. And it is said that AIS should not be fitted onto small vessels according to international guidelines. And local vessels have other difficulties. We do not have our own power generators on board. If we have to install GPS, VHF, collision avoidance radar, and also the AIS, just one battery will not be able to support all these facilities. And also in the wheelhouse, it is a very crowded place. We do not have space for all these. And even if we have these facilities, the Marine Department Traffic Control Center would only be monitoring ocean-going liners, and they do not have capacity to monitor all local small vessels. So I believe these two installations are not appropriate for local vessels. We would need the government to put in more resources first before we can take care of these. Next, Mr. Chen Kwai-chun, Director of Futat Shipping and Transportation Company Limited. Good afternoon, Chairman. With regard to the Marine Department's proposal that launches and ferries with a passenger load of 12 or over, that they should install VHF, I'd like to say the following. Now, modern information technology is very mature, and mobile phones have excellent communication and receiving capacity.
As early as April 2003, at the ITBP of the Council, the administration already issued a paper saying that the coverage of mobile phone was already very extensive, and even if there were spots that were not covered, well, so long as you can call 112, you will be able to get connection, and you can also seek help by calling 112, and therefore, so long as you have a cell phone, that will already be able to replace VHF. And also, the beauty of using a cell phone is that it can also serve as a GPS facility, and that will also help communicating with the other side. And the existing VHS, there is only one side that can talk at any one time, and that's the problem. And also in the past, for the wireless communication network, well, the police have been relying on that, and several years ago, they've also introduced mobile phone as a replacement communication tool, and therefore we are of the view that where necessary, if we were to be required to install VHF, even if that's necessary, we should only be requiring that on board of ocean or long-haul vessels. In the past, for wireless communication equipment that's designed for ocean liners, that's why the system is extremely complicated and sophisticated. That's why only trained personnel are able to use it. But then if you look at local waters, well, the operators, even if they are licensed, the kind of license that they get and also the type of examination that they have to sit, well, basically that was designed in the 70s or 80s of the last century. so it's no longer updated, and it's also not suitable for the busy marine traffic within Hong Kong waters. And if the administration insists on implementing this, then at least it will have to review the present radio communication program, and it should also streamline the examination, and it should be replaced by a certificate course. And without these support measures in place, if the administration just insists on bulldozing this route, this is not going to work. Next, Mr. Chow Chi-tong from the Wing Yip Shipping and Transportation Company Limited. Yes, Chairman, I'm representing the Wing Yip Shipping and Transportation Company Limited. The administration of the Marine Department requires us to install CCTV and also other facilities on board of the wheelhouse. I think is overdone, is not warranted. Yes, in the wake of the accident, we agree that there is a need for us to improve passenger safety, and something more can be done. And we're willing to do it. I've also taken part at meetings of the sector. We discuss how we can enhance marine safety. And according to the Marine Department, for vessels with more than 200 passengers, we have to have CCTV on board, and there should also be audio recording system, and AIS should also be installed. I think the practical function that can be served by such systems would be very limited in Hong Kong's very busy marine traffic. In fact, for the maintenance of such equipment, that would be quite a disturbance to those of us operating in the sector. But then still, we accept that CCTV should be installed within the wheelhouse, and then the camera should be facing the outside of the vessel. But then that should not be a required item for regular inspection. And also with regard to the audio recording system, well, within the wheelhouse, the ambient noise level might be over 70 decibel, and very likely the system would only be able to record the miscellaneous background noise instead of the conversation or the communication amongst the seamen, and therefore with such installation we will not be able to use that as if it was the black box on board of the aircraft. And also, well, we've also conducted some questionnaire. Some seamen are concerned that their privacy might be infringed upon, and therefore they have this resentment against such an audio recording system, and they are prepared to accept a CCTV. Finally, I've been in this sector for many years. I'm also a captain, and therefore I'd like to speak on behalf of captains and also seamen. All along, we've been serving the Hong Kong port, and Hong Kong's collision rate has been very low. I'm sure the Marine Department can confirm that with their data. And if we just neglect or ignore the contribution made by the local maritime industry simply because of this single incident, I think that's not fair. Next, Mr. Mike Ng, Director of Ocean Freight Logistics Limited. Good afternoon, everyone. The Marine Department intends to introduce this safety management system, and this system used to be installed only on board of ocean liners, and the system would require a lot of documentation, the filling up of forms, and also dedicated personnel to do the monitoring and management work, and it's very cumbersome and complicated. Well, in Hong Kong, most of these operators are small to medium-sized enterprises, and in some cases they only have one or two shipowners, and in some cases the shipowners would also be the operator on board of the vessel. That's why we believe that such requirement would not be reasonable. And is that really necessary? In the wake of the collision, the Marine Department in response to the 73 recommendations made by the two maritime experts hastily required us to comply with such requirements. Apparently, they have been passing the buck on to the local operators. And the experts' recommendations have actually far exceeded the standards imposed by the IMO, and is simply not achievable in Hong Kong. And the safety management system has not been a requirement in many overseas ports. And to impose it on the local operators would be quite a burden. And given the small scale of operation in our company, we simply do not have the manpower and resources to meet the requirement. Out of the 73 recommendations, are they all suitable for Hong Kong? Should they just impose that on us? And does that necessarily mean that we can guarantee safety if we implement all those measures? Well, we are now abiding by the 1972 International Avoidance of Collision rules, and that has been in place and enforced in Hong Kong for a long time. And in Hong Kong, the operating environment is already very difficult. With these additional measures, that would only worsen the situation. Thank you. Next, Mr. Leung Yat Sing, Director of Yat Sing Shipyard Limited. Thank you, Chairman. I'm concerned about the shortage of hands on board of the vessel. Taking our shipyard as an example, all along, we are suffering from the problem of shortage of hands in our shipyard. In the market, there is a shortage of manpower. There are not many new recruits, and there is also an aging technical staff. And as a result, we are faced with this difficult situation. And the shipyard has been suffering from a shortage of manpower, and that has extended the time frame for ship repair and maintenance. And the knock-on effect is that we are actually shortening the operating cycle of vessels, and there is a chance that because of the frequency of service, that would also have some adverse impact, and that would also affect other vessels. And some of our fellow operators are forced to hire semi-skilled workers or workers who are not up to the par, and that could also affect the repair quality and even maritime safety. What is really sad is that this is not just happening to shipyards. This is also happening in the waters of Hong Kong. A couple of days ago, I talked to a ship owner with 1 or 2 commercial vessels. He said that originally he had 6 seamen, but then just last month 2 already left their post, and he has yet to recruit new seamen, and therefore he is now having difficulty to have the vessels operating, and he's very frustrated, and therefore he's now thinking about whether he should close his business. The manpower shortage problem has been a problem that we have been facing in recent years. With the commencement of major projects like the Hong Kong-Macau-Zhuhai Bridge and also the Central Wan Chai bypass, that has actually made the situation worse. During the past year or so, many people have been attracted by high wages in those other projects, and they have actually switched jobs, as these projects would only be able to offer jobs that are transitional in nature, and therefore in most cases, those jobs would only be for 3 or 5 years, and the contractors would try to recruit people with high wages so that they'll be able to complete those projects on schedule. As a result, our situation has become worse. Hong Kong is a maritime port, and we have to have a series of support facilities and services. For example, boat tugging, pilotage, oil filling vessels, operating vessels, and also barges and so on. But then, given the gap in the manpower situation, and if the administration doesn't do anything about this very pressing issue, and if it just insists on pushing through those immature measures, then in the end, the trade will suffer. Mr. Leung, your time's up. That would not only undermine Hong Kong's role as a maritime port, that would also affect people's livelihood. Thank you. Your time's up. Next, Mr. Sammy Lee. He's from Harvest Maritime Services Company Limited. Good afternoon, Chairman. I'm representing Harvest Marine Services Company Limited. We operate passenger carrying vessels. I'd just like to say that we have a shortage of manpower. In fact, there are problems in relation to shipyards. We are suffering from a shortage of manpower, and also even for our passenger carrying vessels, we have difficulty recruiting new hands. And there is also an aging problem within our staff. If you look at our workers and also our seamen, most of them are over 55. But then for years, the administration apparently has not been providing sufficient training, and as a result, we do not have much training for seamen. And in the wake of the October the 1st collision, the administration is now imposing more stringent requirement on equipment, VHF, and so on and so forth. But then for this group of seamen, most of whom are over 55, and they used to be fishermen, and they do not have very high education level. And if they were to be required to operate such equipment, then that would make life even more difficult for them. And over the years, in terms of training for seamen, the administration has been providing very little support. This month, there's a training for Class 3 captain, but then the tuition fee is over $15,000. Yes, for those who are licensed already or who have already passed the Class 3 captain examination, they can get a 70% subsidy. But then for a new recruit, if they have to pay that much to undergo training, then who would be bothered? Who would have the incentive to do that? And indeed, this is not a very promising trade. Yes, I understand that a lot of resources have been put in place or have been put in the academic training, but then for those working at sea, very little training has been offered in terms of vessel operation and repair and maintenance and so on. If the trade is to remain competitive, then number one, we have to step up training. Concerning the examination system or licensing system, indeed the situation has been very unclear.
Very often you rely on private courses. The government is not conducting courses to help people learn steer a boat and steer a boat safely. So we are only talking about improving the quality of seamen in Hong Kong instead of doing it. The industry, of course, subscribes to marine safety. But if you are only talking about adding equipment instead of also training the people to operate the equipment, even the most advanced equipment will not give you more marine safety. Thank you. Mr. Lee Ka-leung, Sai Kung District Councillor. Thank you, Chairman. Last year, we had the Lama accident causing 39 lives to be lost. We should improve marine safety, but then at the same time, we must not lose sight of the actual operating environment of the trade. Actually, the investigation report pointed out that the captains did not understand the English guide to radar operation, and so they also lacked the training, so they could not do what they were supposed to do. And another captain said that his sightline was quite clear, so he did not avail himself to the radar chart. And also, Lama 4 was not equipped with the right number of seamen on board. So we can see that even if you have the equipment, even if you have a lot of measures, it doesn't mean that you have marine safety. This all boils down to sufficient training and also the right attitude, as well as an awareness of the law. We understand that in the past few years, the average accident rate has been less than 10 every year. And with over 400,000 trips in Hong Kong waters every year, we can say that the accident rate is always quite low. And also there is already annual survey for local vessels. So I believe what is most practical is to really address the problem. There should be the stepping up of cooperation between the Marine Department and the industry. There should be more publicity done, and there should be training provided. The operators should be told and helped to understand their role in promoting marine safety. I'm worried that if the administration will not address the problem but just seeks to do a number of things to show the public, then you may do harm to the industry. I hope the administration will do the right thing. Thank you. Mr. Leung Kwong-yun, the Vice Chairman of the Fishermen Association. I think we have enough laws and regulations, Chairman. Just now, many deputations have also said that if you just add to our burden, you are just subjecting people to more training without attending to their livelihood, and you would just foul up the situation. Next, Mr. Sunny Ho, member of the Hong Kong Maritime Forum. Thank you, Chairman. We have over 40 members at the forum. Many of them attended the working meetings with the Marine Department. So what I'm going to say would only represent what some members agreed on in our meeting on the 28th of August. The members who have attended that meeting are listed in our submission, and I won't repeat those. We have 6 views. Number 1, the improvement measures to be implemented during the first phase were considered to be suitable and reasonable. Number 2, regarding the medium and longer term measures, some attendees doubted whether the AIS would be helpful in preventing collision in our harbor, because in practice, if a number of vessels are crowded into a particular area, the AIS might not provide useful information for the avoidance of collision. Attendees were of the view that proper lookout and use of radar were more practical and better for prevention of collision for local vessels. But the AIS would be useful for the investigation work following a collision. For example, identification of parties liable for the accident, and also records could be traced. Attendees agreed that AIS could exert a deterrent effect on seafarers and raise their safety awareness, and it could also help enhance communication among vessels. Concerning the installation and maintenance costs of AIS, attendees were of the view that the government should provide subsidy to operators. Number 3, attendees echoed with the suggestion that ferries permitted to carry more than 12 passengers should be required to carry a VHF radio, and vessels permitted to carry more than 100 passengers be equipped with AIS radar and VHF radio. Number 4, about the training of coxswain, attendees suggested that refresher training should be made compulsory. But then they also expressed concern over the availability and accreditation of trainers and training facilities. That they concur that this should be properly provided and that training courses should be monitored vis-a-vis their quality. And as for the patrol system of our waters, we think there should be the increase of resources in order to step up marine patrol. Of course, the administration should look into how much resources are required. Number 6, concerning the issue of rest for the crew, attendees concur that they should be given adequate rest. Thank you. Next, Mr. Zhang Chiu-ming, member of the Institute of Sea Transport. Good afternoon, Chairman. I'd like, first of all, to declare that I have no relatives working in the Marine Department. Starting from the age of 17, I have worked alongside the Marine Department because I had to apply for a red book. And now 40 years have passed, and it seems the Marine Department has a lower status, just like in the Lama accident. I think it is quite unfair to the Marine Department. So the Marine Department is not taken care of in a way. I think all of us here are quite upset because it seems we are being attacked. All of us in the industry, including the Marine Department, are being attacked. I would make 2 points. One, we should increase the frequency of patrol in Hong Kong waters, and also we should increase the number of manpower. The VTC is monitoring the situation, but it's just like the emergency call station. It would just receive signals for help, but the Marine Department is just like an executive arm. It cannot do anything because of resource constraints. It can only apply for resources to the CED Bureau, and if the Secretary for CED doesn't approve, the Marine Department cannot do anything. So I think we should increase resources for the Marine Department. We should increase the local waters patrol team vis-a-vis the number of vessels and manpower. And also in a few meetings, we had the view that local vessels captains would be held responsible for the number of children life-saving jackets on board. This is unfair to the local vessel captains. Actually, these captains have much less power and authority compared to their counterparts on ocean-going liners. Because I am a captain of an ocean liner, and I have also been the captain of the largest pleasure vessel in Hong Kong. And I can tell you that we are just like a taxi driver. I tell you, it doesn't mean that you are anybody important. But I think the administration should step up publicity. And if there is a major event, you should step up publicity about the importance of life-saving jackets for children. Next, Mr. Ho Lai-on, Vice Chairman of the Chung Shek Hei Home for the Aged. I represent the Home for the Aged. Every day, our aged people would take the new first ferry to Cheung Chau and Hong Kong Island. Now there is space for the placing of wheelchairs on the vessels. And we also have to have carers taking the elderly people on board. But sometimes the carers cannot be seated right next to the wheelchair-bound elderly people. I hope the ferry operator can allow our carers to be seated right next to the wheelchair-bound elderly people, because as you know, if there is any accident, wheelchair users will need more help. At the same time, on the regular vessels or the so-called slow vessels, there should also be designated wheelchair space on the lower deck. And again, the carers should be able to be seated next to the wheelchair users. As you know, it is now very confusing when you have to alight or board a New World First ferry. We don't have a lot of assistance now on their vessels. I hope you can do these two things to help elderly people use the ferries. Also, if there should be an accident, we don't know whether the emergency lighting system will be functional. We'd like to know whether there are standby batteries fitted into that system so we can be helped in an emergency. And also, as for the fast ferries, On the first row of seats, no seat belts have been fitted. In previous accidents or collision, passengers were thrown out of their seats if they were seated on the first row. We think seat belts should be retrofitted to the first row. And in general, if indeed there is an accident, we hope the ferry companies should designate a commander on site. Every time there is a sail, you should designate somebody to be the overall commander should an incident or accident occur. So everybody would know what to do. So the harm would be much lessened. Thank you. Next, Mr. Huang Li Fan, Vice General Manager of the China Classification Society Hong Kong branch. Thank you, Chairman. I represent the China Classification Society Hong Kong branch. The society is a professional vessel survey association. We agree that the Lama accident has actually resulted from poor navigation. Hong Kong has had a very good track record in this regard. Well, even so, we are of the view that after the Lama incident, we should really take a look at our safety standards. We do agree that to the vessels, the manning ratio should be stepped up if there is a fog, and there should be a lookout. In the past 3 years, amongst the incidents, over 50 had to do with vessel collision. Again, most of that could be traced to the operation by seafarers. So we believe there should be the stepping up of training and company management and also systematization of operation. We believe this will enhance safety. Number 2, because of this Lama accident, we think that the search and rescue protocol should be clarified. According to the relevant convention internationally, Article 33 says that those vessels which are in a position to provide search and rescue, if the captains of these vessels should receive any emergency rescue signal, they have the obligation to provide rescue. From the Lama accident, we believe clearer guidelines should be set in this regard. Thank you. That's all I'd like to say. Mr. Yang Yun Kong, he is the chairman of the International Fishermen Alliance. Thank you, Chairman. On this issue of marine safety, the Hong Kong Marine Department vessel survey work, when compared to neighboring places including Japan, Taiwan, China, the Philippines, etc., I think we are doing a better job. After the Lama accident, the responsibility has been totally put on the shoulders of the Marine Department.
The Marine Department then tried to pass that responsibility onto the local shipping industry. Well, I think in the wake of the Lama incident, if it's the responsibility of the Marine Department, then the Tourism Commission should also be held responsible, because on October the 1st last year, the Tourism Commission sent some 50 fishing vessels to the big temple to pay worship to the gods. All right, they deployed some 50 fishing vessels there to Lama, and that's to Lama Island. Well, if we were to do our rituals in the temple, now, well, they deployed 50 vessels there, and actually they were not equipped with proper equipment, not to mention incense and so on. They didn't really do their job. And then on the 25th of March last year, Chiang Chau fishermen also met with an accident, and actually many people died in an accident. And then on the 1st of October last year, we had the Lemma collision, and several dozen people died. It's not that we are superstitious. Marine police, well, if they have to be involved in many marine operations, they also have to go to the big temple to pay worship to the gods in order to ensure safety. And therefore, I think they should not have neglected the rituals. And therefore, the Tourism Commission, if you're going to carry out anything on, at sea, then you will have to make sure that you do the rituals properly. Next, Mr. C. He's a member of the LVAC, the Local Vessel Advisory Committee. Yes, my surname is Siu. I'm also a shipowner. With regard to local vessel shipowner, you might say that we are substandard. Yes, admittedly, we are not highly educated, but then in terms of maneuvering of local vessels, we have no difficulty whatsoever. With advancement in technology, in radar technology, yes, we have not received sufficient training. We hope that the administration can provide more training on the use of radar and also modern day equipment. Many of us have not received a lot of education, and many of us are not proficient in English. Yes, I used to know how to operate AIS and also radar, but then for CCTV, well, that is not going to help us with our navigation. Thank you. All right, that's all for the deputation's remarks. And before I open the floor to members, I'd like to invite the administration to respond first. Yes, who is going to speak? Deputy Secretary or Director? Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank the Chairman. And Chairman, we are grateful to you for organizing this meeting, enabling us to meet with over 40 deputations. They have given us very valuable comments on how we can enhance marine safety. And there are representatives from different types or classification of vessels. Some are kaito operators, some are ferry operators. So many of these comments are very valuable. I'd just like to highlight a few issues. First of all, like the administration and the public, the sector is attaching great importance to safety, and we've been grateful to the sector because for so many years they have been taking this as their top priority, and as they have said, Hong Kong waters have been largely very safe, and the accident rate has been very low. But then after every accident, we can always learn a lesson from that, and Hong Kong waters are now becoming more complicated. The marine traffic is becoming busier, and there is always room for improvement by taking on board the advice from experts. We fully understand that with the proposed changes, they might pose some challenges to the sector. For the more specific details, I'll leave that to the Director of Marine to respond later. But then I understand that the sector is very concerned about the manning level and a shortage of manpower. We fully understand that the sector is now faced with this manpower shortage problem, and this year the Financial Secretary has also set aside $100 million for the training of air traffic and maritime traffic personnel. We understand that for the training of seamen, we can also make use of that fund to support the local shipping industry. And we are now discussing with the trade as to how we can make use of part of the funds for the training of local captains and seamen. And this training fund will be operational by the end of this year because we're going to seek funding support from this council. And on the shortage problem, we'll be working in different fronts. For example, on the number of places and also on the training courses, we are actually working with the VTC so that for the 23 introductory course, the number of places will be increased from 60 to 80. So that would represent a 1/3 increase. We will continue to work with the VTC and other trade associations and trade unions to see what we can do in terms of training. Other than the VTC, if there are other institutions which are able to provide such training, then we'll be more than happy to consider that. And for new recruits, if they are willing to undergo training, then that would be great. And also for the serving deckhands, some of them have already entered the trade, but then they'd like to pursue further studies by obtaining professional qualifications. We understand that in terms of training, we can afford to have more training programs in order to enable them to upgrade themselves. And also, while they are undergoing training, they might need some financial assistance and incentives so that when they take the examinations, they can also receive some assistance. So for those who are already serving seamen, we are working on that. And then for those who have yet to join the profession, we are working with the VTC to see how we can attract more young people to join the profession. They could also take the examination to become local captains. So for the $100 million fund to be set up, that would be used for that purpose. And if local trade unions have any suggestions, we'll be more than happy to take on board their views. And also, just now, some deputations are also wondering if the Marine Department is given sufficient resources to do their job. And if the Marine Department thinks that there is a need for additional resources, we'll be more than happy to do or to bid for more funds for them. Mr. Liu. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for giving us very valuable comments. The Marine Department, as the Bureau representative just said, we have heard your voices loud and clear. We'll be working very positively on your suggestions. Wherever possible, we'll be prepared to accept your suggestions. I'd like to take the opportunity to say a few words on what the Marine Department proposes to do in terms of the recommendations made by the experts. We are actually looking at what we discussed at the meeting held on the 22nd of July. In the wake of the October the 1st collision at Lamma, the Marine Department immediately put in place a number of measures. We also discussed with the trade as to the short, medium, and long-term improvement measures. And during the past 10 months or so, we've been working with the representatives from the sector, and over 20 meetings have been held so far. Other than asking all the shipping companies to take practical measures to enhance marine safety, we have also been looking at how we can comprehensively enhance the safety standards for passenger carrying vessels, including stepped-up training for personnel and also the requirement on safety equipment. And also there is also a guideline on rest breaks and also the third-party safety indemnity insurance and also maritime incident relief fund and so on. After many meetings, some of these recommendations, for example, the safety measures for major events at sea and also refreshment training for captains and also Class 3 captain certificate and also on the job training certificate and so on. Those have been supported by the sector and they'll be implemented in the near term. Here, I'd like to thank the trade for their support for the Marine Department's work all along. Just now, I've heard many speakers say that they agree that we have to enhance marine safety. We share the same objective and target. But I do understand that the sector might have some concerns about certain measures. And allow me to explain a bit further on some of these measures. There intention and how they're going to be implemented in order to allay your concerns. First of all, on the short-term measures, first is about the lookout in the wheelhouse. We are requiring that all passenger carrying vessels with a seating capacity of over 100, there is an additional requirement that a lookout be in place, so that in foggy weather or where the visibility is poor, within the wheelhouse, at least a seaman should be there to assist the coxswain in doing the lookout. And for a high-speed vessel, at any one time, there should be a seaman assisting in the lookout. And according to our understanding, this practice is very prevalent these days, and that would also help ensure marine safety. Well, the sector is concerned that the lookout might be burdened with too much responsibility. In fact, the coxswain is still the commander on board of the vessel, and the captain is the one who is responsible, and therefore the lookout or the seaman could not be held liable for that. So it's not the responsibility of the seaman, and there are some who are concerned about the qualification of the lookout. In fact, the seaman responsible for doing the lookout would mainly be responsible for assisting the captain in keeping an eye on the maritime conditions, and therefore there is no need for additional training. But then if there is a need, then we'll be more than happy to help provide training for these seamen. And for the lookout, well, once every 5 years, he will have to undergo an eyesight test, because he has to have a good eyesight. For example, he must not be colorblind before he can do the job of a lookout. And also in terms of the muster list, well, the purpose of having this, that is to ensure that seamen will know exactly what they are supposed to do in an event of emergency. For example, if there is a fire on board of the vessel, they have to know what they are supposed to do. And the drills should be carried out at least once every 2 months. And to facilitate the shipping company to make preparation for that, the Marine Department will be distributing a template for the muster list. And then, well, the intention is not to increase the number of seamen, but then for different categories of vessel and also the number of passengers, we have to have a standardized establishment list in order to enhance transparency of the establishment and make sure that it's reasonable. With this being established, the shipping company can then recruit the staff accordingly. In the end, we have to carry out drills in order to ensure that the manning level is appropriate and adequate. With regard to life jackets with the name of the company printed, that's to ensure that they will be working according to the standards, because for the serial number of the vessel, it cannot be changed, and therefore we have to have the license number printed on the life jackets, and that would also facilitate checking by the Marine Department. In terms of the warning system, well, we are not talking about general watertight doors. Well, we are actually talking about watertight doors beneath the waterline. Well, we understand that two vessels have yet to be installed with such systems, but then in September and November this year, they will be the installation will be completed, and therefore that should not affect the trade.
As for medium and long-term measures, may I also speak on them here? The AIS, and also VHF, and also the radar. These measures are not such that they must be up to the standard for ocean-going liners, but rather they should be ones that are suitable to be fitted on local vessels. Just like what we said in a previous LegCo paper, all equipment has its function and it should be installed. We'll also help to provide training to make sure that seamen have enough knowledge and training to operate such equipment. The MD will continue to talk to the trade to make available practical measures. In terms of actual operation, actually we do not doubt the steering capacity of coxswain, but then we only provide a simulated environment so the captain or coxswain can be drilled about different emergencies so as to enhance the capacity to deal with emergencies. With regard to the guideline on rest break for seamen, now the trade operates with 1 day work and 1 day rest. And there may be a misunderstanding caused to the public thinking that seamen are working 24 hours at one stretch, but actually they work up for about 13 hours. We understand the aspiration of the trade and also seamen that they would like the present system preserved. The MD has no intention to change the system. But after the accident, the MD does think that long working hours may be one of the causes. And the seamen may be too tired at the time of the accident. In order to take care of the fears of the public and also to allow the public to be more confident, we think there is a need to drop a guideline for rest breaks for the seamen. The trade is afraid that the guideline may be too rigid and there may be labor relation problems as a result. So the MD will continue to talk to the trade about flexibility in implementing the guideline. As to other views put forward by the trade. Training. The trade is concerned that the establishment standards of certain vessels has been changed, and it is said that during certain times there should be a lookout helping out the coxswain, and so there could be the necessity to increase the number of people on board. But we think that this is important for safety and will give you time to increase manpower. After 1 year of the guidelines having been written, we will implement the guidelines so you have time to get prepared. The MD will continue to talk to the different training institutes to help them provide training courses. At the same time, the MD will consider exempting in-service seamen by giving recognition to certain training they have undergone. The MD will also help the trade do publicity to attract new blood into the local maritime industry. As for the installation of children life-saving jackets for Class 2 vessels, well, yes, these vessels have to have life-saving jackets for children on board. This is the legal requirement. Actually, these vessels do allow children to be on board. Also, children passengers are allowed on vessels within the typhoon shelter, so this is necessary for Class 2 vessels. As for health certification, again, this is a measure proposed by the investigation committee, and we do agree at the department that the captain should be subject to an annual physical check. As for safety management systems, again, this is a proposal by the investigation committee. The MD is of the view that if a passenger carrying vessel carries more than 100 persons, there should be a safety management system drawn up to enhance safety. The MD can provide a template for reference. Lastly, I'd like to thank deputations again for coming to the meeting today. The MD and the industry will continue to work very closely to continue to increase safety at sea, because there is also a requirement for the trade to move forward with the times, and also the public do expect that seafaring is safe in Hong Kong. We have the same objective. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director. It is now time for members to ask questions. Our meeting should end at 4:45, but members have yet to ask questions. I will extend the meeting appropriately. Let me see how many members would like to ask questions first. I'll draw a line there. 3 members. Yik Chi Ming, Frankie Yik, Yu Si Wing, and Ten Ka Piu. 4 minutes each. If you have questions for the deputations, please give them time to answer you. Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you, Chairman. First, I'd like to thank the deputations for coming to the meeting today. I think you have made use of the opportunity today to express your views to officials and members and to explain to us the difficulties you are facing and also some doubts on your mind. The deputations have spoken a lot, and I thank the Director for clarifying certain issues. I believe the industry is now clearer about the Marine Department's requirements. To me, the accident is an isolated incident. It has its own causes. I like to speak on two things. One, medium and long-term measures, including the AIS. Just now, many experts and many captains expressed their views with regard to such equipment for in-harbor small vessels. I hope the MD will give more consideration to that. Why do you only listen to overseas experts but not the local experts? I hope you will consider this point again, because once you install something, it is not just the cost. Just like last time, Mr. Sin Chung Kai said, if you don't have enough money, then you can charge your passengers more. No, not that. But whether the equipment is going to be actually functional and useful, would that just lead to more confusion? Secondly, actually in the last meeting, I mentioned that the trade is facing a gap in succession. There are no new people joining the trade. The Deputy Secretary talked about some measures, but this problem cannot be resolved here and now. As I said at the last panel meeting, the industry basically agrees that there is room to improve marine safety further, but then they need time to provide channels to get people trained. In fact, at different panels, we have said time and again that in different industries and sectors in Hong Kong, we do not have enough people, and it is particularly acute for the marine industry. Before we can have a solution for this, Director, I hope after the meeting you should write a paper to tell us that if you are going to implement these measures in a year's time, you must get the manpower necessary for the trade. In fact, I have heard some deputations say that they are going to give up the services they are providing. If this goes on, the public will be deprived of much needed vessel services. Chairman, just now, I forgot to declare I'm a Director of Staff Ferry. Mr. Yu Si Wing. Thank you, Chairman. I can see that there are many deputations represented in this meeting. It goes to show that they're all very concerned about the government policies and then the impact of these policies, including what Mr. Yik said, the equipment and also manpower. To me, before you make laws and policies, I hope the MD can adopt a mechanism to listen to the different stakeholders, especially the representatives of ship owners and companies, so that your laws and regulations will be feasible. Or else, when you implement such regulations, the trade will be affected and the livelihood can also be harmed. Secondly, if I look at the Lloyd's Register and the report by Lloyd's, the second point is that a number of shortcomings have been identified by authorized surveyors. In fact, some authorized surveyors have received warnings in the last 2 years, 8 of them, and there have been shortcomings committed by them. The MD said that it would strictly implement the established procedures. But I think your response is too superficial. I think you should set up a mechanism to deal with the deficiencies or shortcomings of authorized surveyors. You must have a standing mechanism to tackle this, or else if something should happen and there is no penalty system, it won't do. And I'm not only talking about vessel surveying. The MD will also do other kinds of examination, I think you should be more detailed in drawing up that mechanism. Director or Deputy Secretary, would you like to respond? Thank you. I'd like to respond to Mr. Frankie Yik first about AIS. The MD, with regard to the installation of such equipment, has made reference to overseas places where their vessels operate in similar environments. The advantage is that ocean-going liners or large vessels have electronic maps plus an AIS. They can effectively avoid collision. So these large vessels are helped. And also, AIS together with VHF, if a vessel has AIS, if there is an emergency, then other people will be able to identify the vessel. If it has the AIS, other vessels will be able to identify it, especially when the harbor is crowded. This will help the identification of the vessel so it can be helped. And also in an emergency, every second matters. The Marine Police, the FSD, and the Marine Department vessels can arrive on the spot and identify the vessel. If the vessel also make use of VHF, then all vessels in the vicinity which makes use of the same frequency will be able to hear, and so the vessel in question can be assisted. Please also answer the points made by Mr. Yu. With regard to the Lloyd's Register, which is a classification society, and also with regard to authorized surveyors, the department is conducting a disciplinary hearing. 2 external persons plus 2 staff members of the MD are looking into the incident. If it is found that there is serious negligence or any kind of deficiency, we can suspend the authorization, or the authorization can be revoked. At the time, we are now doing the disciplinary hearing. Would there be a mechanism before regulations are implemented for you to continue to liaise with the trade on a regular basis? Meetings with the trade are conducted under the LVAC. That committee holds regular meetings every year. If the trade have any views, they can make use of this channel. And also under the LVAC, there are subcommittees which deal with different types of vessels.
OK， 鄧家彪議員。
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to declare that a district councillor from the Islands District, and we do have a number of experts here telling us your difficulties and views. I think is a driving force for change and sustainability. We all hope that the industry can develop in a sustainable manner. All right, it's the first anniversary after the shipwreck incident. Well, we should not just blame it on the individuals. I think that's not what we want. Through the reforms introduced by the Marine Department and the administration, we have to do something in order to rebuild confidence. I'm sure that's the path that we should take. But then are we able to do that? As some deputations have said, there are problems. Well, I may not have been entirely objective, but then if you look at the data, in fact, this is not really a shrinking industry. For example, well, with regard to Class 4 vessel, for higher boats. Actually, we have seen an increase from 106 to 590 in a few years' time. As an island district councillor, when I go to the outlying islands, I can see that in the early 2000s and also in the early 90s and so on, very often I managed to get on board of a vessel in a very last minute. But then in these days, if you want to go to Lemma and other outlying islands, you will not be able to have a seat if you just board the vessel in a last minute. I think we all try to learn a lesson from the Sorry Saga last year. That's why, as the Director for Marine just said, well, he talked about communication with the trade. I think we should acknowledge that. We should recognize those efforts. But then, with regard to the first stage of improvement measures, well, there are 5 points. All right. In September, you're going to revise the code of practice, and then that will be implemented right away. Well, if there are difficulties, then can we adopt a phased approach? For example, for those providing regular passenger and ferry service, should they be given priority? Should they do that first? And then for the medium to long term, for the installation of AIS, should we be installing that on board of those vessels that are subject to more stringent regulation? And also, for those with the necessary resources, should they do it first, so that we can roll that out to other vessels later? Would that be more acceptable? Sorry, you will have to give time to them to answer. All right, some of these measures have to do with the manpower, some have to do with technology and so on. But then for at sea incidents, with regard to the no fault insurance policy, well, can that be done? So can you respond to that? Yes, Director. Thank you, Chairman. On the implementation of the improvement measures, yes, we understand that we have to sort that out with the industry, and we don't think we can implement them right away within this month. The earliest would be next month. As regards the implementation of these measures in a phased manner, we will continue to liaise with the trade. If there are technical difficulties, we will see what we can do to help them. For example, on power supply on board of the vessel, and also the next phase of equipment like radar, AIS. We understand that some vessels might have technical difficulties installing such equipment. We will look at the problems on the ground, and we'll see what we can do to help them solve these technical difficulties. And what about safeguards at sea? Well, with regard to Marine Accidents Relief Fund, well, a consultancy is now conducting a study on this, and we expect that to be completed by the end of this year. And then we will take it up with the industry. We will consult them for their views. I'd also like to take the opportunity to offer my condolences to the victims and their family members. All right. Many months have passed. Still, I understand how they feel about it. And in the wake of the accident, I can see that all parties are under a lot of pressure. The administration, the stakeholders, and those in the sector, captains and seamen alike, they are subject to a lot of pressure. The administration has engaged experts who have given recommendations on how we can enhance marine safety. Just now we have heard the administration's views and the industry's views. Everybody agrees that safety should be the top priority. But then according to the industry, they are also telling us that some of the recommendations made by the administration might be difficult to implement. Number one, they have manpower problems, and number two, there might be cost implications. And even in terms of supply of certain equipment, there might be difficulties. Therefore, they are saying that they should have further discussions with you, or there might need to be a grace period. And also, on manpower, different deputations are saying that through different channels and avenues, in terms of the demand for manpower, the administration should step up training so that more talents can be trained. And you will have to convey this to the relevant bureau. With regard to supply, from what I gather from the deputations, they have difficulty recruiting the necessary manpower, in particular the technical staff. I hope that you can convey this to the relevant bureau. We have to provide sufficient manpower to the shipping companies. And Mr. Frankie Yik also said that if we have to install such equipment, then the cost will be passed on to the users or the passengers. But then for some of the outlying island operators, actually they are also faced with a lot of pressure in their operations. Some actually say that they might as well give up, and the administration has to try and offer some assistance. So if the costs were to be passed on to them, how are they going to cope? There might be difficulties. So the administration will have to look into this. And from what I gather from the deputations, some are not warranted. For example, do we really want to impose the requirements on ocean liners, on local vessels? Should we distinguish between the two and have separate requirements? I think the views are very clear. And some of the more trivial issues like the number of life jackets on board, maybe the department and the policy bureau might wish to take it up with the industry. I'll give you 1 minute. On the additional costs, I didn't say that you can pass it on to the others. Well, I was just quoting Mr. Sin Chung Kai at the last panel meeting. He said that all right, if it's not enough, then they could increase fares. Well, I might not have expressed myself entirely clearly. I said that some members, I did not refer to you. All right, some members did say that if people apply for a fare hike, then they would say no to it. Anything that you'd like to add? No? All right, thank you very much for coming then. Your views are indeed very valuable. I hope that the administration will take on board your comments and deal with them accordingly. I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.